Hey, good evening, and welcome to Mark's Message. Peachtree Corners, the peachiest place on the planet. Yes, it is happening right here. And before we talk about our guest this evening, a very special guest, really looking forward to this, I got to give the shout out. So, the first one up is the Go Live, Grow Live Academy, right? We're going to do that. Emerging sales winners and the diehards with that. On top of that, we have an organization out there, Megamind, and then Megamind Pro. So I got all my shout outs. Hey, you know what? I'm not kidding you. It is the peachiest place on the planet. But who we have here this evening, Douglas R. Wing. And let me read you a little bio about Doug. Really some cool stuff. Doug has over 40 years experience in manufacturing, operations, sales leadership, and executive management. He was a co owner and vice chairman at Little Giant Ladder Systems before retiring in 2019. Can you dig that? Retiring. So this guy is worth a few pennies. Trust me. He's worked for one company for 45 years. Okay. So we're going to ask him how that worked out. Now, in 2020, he co founded, and this is what we're really going to discuss tonight, Bohr Investment Group. And Bohr is involved in apartment rentals and property management. And Doug serves on the board of Honoring Heroes Foundation. I want to get into that as well. It's a charitable organization that helps fallen police officers and their families. That is very nice indeed. He served two missions for the Church of Jesus Christ Latter day Saints, Mormon Church. He did two missions. I want to talk to him about that as well. Currently, Doug lives in Arizona, Utah. He enjoys riding motorcycles. We got to ask him which one his favorite one is, and cars. And he likes to play golf, so I'll have to figure out what his score is. Reading and fitness. And he also enjoys collecting cars, motorcycles. And he was born in Germany. Can you believe that? So, is there anything this guy can't do? Because he comes from the elk of, Harold Howe R. Wing, which is kind of cool. So, let's bring him on here. Let's bring the man himself. Doug, what's been going on, my man?
Hey, Mark, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you great. I hear you great. I'm sorry, I'm
Great.
amped up, but I'm with a celebrity here tonight.
I don't know about that, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, and thank you very much. I wanted to see how your son was doing and say congratulations. He just got married, right?
Yes, sir. He surely did. It went well. It was a we. It wasn't a full-fledged Greek Orthodox wedding because we couldn't do it within the church because of COVID and all this and that. So we had to pick a venue, and it was like 2 hours away, Doug. So it was a journey for all of us, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of Greek dancing later on, but later on, probably I think December 12th, he will be officially married in the church. He'll be lot smaller, but we had to do it that way to invite everybody, but we had a blast.
Well, we're living in interesting times, so I mean, we just have to do the best we can.
Yes, and before we get into all that, look at us. We got, oh wow. I know you know this guy, Ron Goodwin, right? He's saying hello to us.
Hey, Ron.
Ken Mayberry, hello. Yeah, the pizza man. That always makes me hungry. Kenny always has that logo out there. Yep, Kellen Ann. Hello, Mark G. Thank you, Kellen, for hopping on board. And look at this. Scott Rickard saying hi to us.
Hey, Kellen, Scott, how are you?
And we got Randy Chafee out there. They're all out here. They're just starting out. So I have to ask, Doug. So you were at Little Giant with your dad. And this is always the question I like to ask people. You had somebody to model your father. She had to be a hero to you. So, what was it like working for your dad? Just curious.
Well, my dad and my mother are both incredible individuals and great role models for me. But my dad was a absolute dynamo. I never saw my dad afraid of anything or anyone or any challenge. And he had this inner belief in himself that whatever he set his mind to do with hard work and perseverance, he could do it. And he did expect a lot out of us. He was in the military for a few years in the Army, and he was very organized, and we didn't get away with anything. In fact, he told us, you're going to work twice as hard as anybody else, and if you're working for me, because your last name is Wing. And but very smart man, a man that was only 5'7", but he had a heart of a lion, and I never saw him back down to anyone or anything. But an incredible example of hard work and just a positive attitude, and very smart man, high school educated, but brilliant.
And would he be considered from that greatest generation, Doug, as far as his age, or not?
He was born in 1940.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about my dad was his dad was an incredible man. He worked as a supervisor for the railroad full-time, and then had a 10-acre farm that he worked on the side. And so my dad grew up with an incredible work ethic, and they got up with the chickens because they had to do irrigation and weeding and planting and harvesting and those types of things. And so my dad really had a dad that was a hard worker. And then my grandmother was amazing. You could go to her house any time of the day on your bicycle, and she could, within a matter of minutes, would cook anything you wanted to cook, and everything was made from scratch. And always had baked cinnamon rolls, pies, cookies, cakes. I mean, they were phenomenal people.
That's incredible. Well, let me ask you this. Your dad started Little Giant Ladder. Just briefly, could you give a capsulated overview? How did your dad come up with the idea, the concept? What was it about the ladder that he said, hey, I want to do this? Can you tell us?
Sure. Quick? Yeah, it's really quite an extraordinary story. My father was a top producing life insurance salesman for a company in Salt Lake City, and because he spoke German and my mom was from Germany, this life insurance company decided to open up an agency in Germany. And so I was born in Germany, then we moved back, and then when I was about 7 years old, we moved back to Germany, and my father started this life insurance agency, and it was very successful. One of his partners, a man by the name of Richard Miner, was living over there as well, and he saw the original Waku ladder, that's W-A-K-U, that was invented by a German house painter. Okay. And it was very crude, but this Richard Miner saw this ladder, and he was so excited about it. He approached my dad, and my dad said, Richard, what are you talking about? We're selling insurance. I don't want to see this ladder. Well, anyway, with persistence, finally, he convinced my father to see this ladder. And when my dad saw the ladder, he was so blown away by it. And so he actually became very good friends with Walter Kimmerling, who was the inventor and owner of this company. And they became very good friends, and it just took off from there.
Wow. And so you mentioned, and I've heard you on other podcasts or live streaming, that you would actually, as a company, take a look at the competition, and you knew you had a winner, but you found the faults of your competitors, and you would cut them in half and look at how they were constructed versus what you did. Now, who came up with that concept? Was that your dad, like to do the reconnaissance on the competition?
Well,
so you have value?
Sure. In the very beginning, you have to remember there wasn't any competition. So in 1972, Little Giant Ladder Systems, Wing Enterprises, was started, and so my dad would bring containers full of ladders over, and there was no competition because this was in the 70s and the economy wasn't too great. and the exchange rates weren't very good. My dad was doing toe-to-toe sales, and it was a very expensive way to sell that ladder, but it had to be demonstrated. And it wasn't until later, until he was successful, and the patents started expiring, that competitors came in. But he was actually laughed at a trade show. The two owners of Werner Ladder Company, which is probably still the largest ladder company in the world, walked up to my dad and said, "You're a fool, Wing. There's no way you're going to be successful with this ladder. We could have had it years ago, and you're going to fail."
Wow, that's incredible. And your dad, being the man he is, he's very tenacious. He ignored all that. My point is, and I appreciate you sharing that, Doug. A lot of times I didn't always feel that way, but your dad had a mentality of, not that he didn't care for his family, but outside of his family, he didn't really care what anybody else thought, right? He was going to do what he mapped out to do. Is that correct?
Exactly. He said that day that those brothers told him that, that was a huge motivation to him. And going back to the story, when our patents actually ran out, it was a big blessing to the company, because it forced us to really focus on the company. And we did the infomercial after that, which was hugely successful. And then with the growth of the company and the things that happened, we were able to innovate, spend the money on innovation, and it really helped the company go into different verticals and really strengthened the company as those things happened.
And as far as infomercials, which I think is important here, was it your dad's vision, Doug, that he said, "Hey, we need to put this on TV," or did somebody approach him and say, "Hey, Hal, you need to get out there and show people how easy this is, your ladder"?
Well, we knew that the ladder, the demonstration sold the product, and we were very successful in fairs, state fairs, trade shows, home and garden shows. And when people saw the presentation, they bought ladders. And so the company was at a real crossroads, like I mentioned, where our sales had sunk to an all-time low, and we were in a very dire situation. And one of our employees suggested that we do an infomercial. Now, the interesting thing about the infomercial is the company didn't have the money to do this infomercial. And so at that time, I believe they were about $400,000 to $500,000 to do an infomercial. And my father said, "Okay, I will loan you the money. I will personally loan you the money to do this.
Wow.
But in 6 months, I want my money back." And he also said, "I want I'm going to be in the infomercial, and I want a commission on every ladder that is sold." And so he got a pretty nice check every month for several years, just for a commission on the. So he made his money back and then some as well.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah, your dad was pretty cool on those, man. I always like watching him, man. He just kind of made everything look easy, easy peasy.
Well, exactly. And here's something that a lot of people may not know. When those infomercials, when they first started, they had a script that was probably, let's see if I can, they had a big script they wanted my dad to memorize. And my dad said, "No, I know exactly what to say and exactly what to do. So let's just get the cameras rolling." And a lot of it was off the cuff with him. It was incredible. But you have to remember that my dad had such a belief in the product and a passion for the product. And if you watch those infomercials, you see that, you feel it. And he really was the star of the show.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, so now you're successful, you're chugging along. Did you run into any financial Goliaths along the way? I know you mentioned sales were down. So now sales pick up, things are rocking and rolling. I know your dad did a lot of nice things for the employees. I wish I would have had a guy like that where I worked. I know you told stories where he helped people purchase homes. He might have I don't want to say he gave them the money, he lent money to them. And, I just think that's amazing that he had the foresight to understand about employees truly are your best investment, and companies say that, they mouth it, but your dad actually lived it. And could you share a story with us, like
Sure.
how he helped an employee?
Well, he had this ability. There's a saying on the building of Little Giant that says, if you can't concentrate on building the business and not the man, you will not succeed. But if you build the man, if you build the man, you achieve both. And so it kind of goes back to Ziegler's little saying that says, you can get anything you want to in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And so my dad had this philosophy of, hey, let's build people, and then the rest will come. And so he had this ability to, first of all, he had this ability to see people not as they currently were, but as to their potential. And so, there's a story about one of our early employees. He came in and applied for a job, and he had just come out of prison. And he was an ex-con, and he was a police officer, but got involved in some things he shouldn't have and went to prison. And my dad said, I'm going to give you a job. And he said, well, don't you know what happened to me? Don't you know what I've done? And my dad says, of course I know what you've done, but I believe in you. I see, value in you and possibilities, potential in you. And so he gave this gentleman a job, and the gentleman worked for us for like 25, 30 years. And one day my dad called him into his office and handed him keys to the building. And this guy was like 6'2", 6'3", about 260 pounds, big, solid, muscle-bound guy. And he goes, what are these keys for? And my dad says, well, you're going to need these keys because you're now the plant supervisor. And this guy literally burst into tears and hugged my dad, picked him up like a rag doll. And he ended up working for us until retirement. So my dad had this incredible way of seeing people not as they currently were, but as their potential that they had. And he took a lot of chances on people. And I believe that the reason why he did that is because he was kind of an underdog growing up. My dad was. And so he was always looking out for the underdog.
So your dad was type of guy. Let me see. Would you say, Doug, what you see is what you get? He wasn't a phony, right? What?
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
he was.
He was the real deal. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, Jeffrey and I had a conversation, Jeffrey Gittimer, and he goes, you know what? Your dad was a man's man. I mean, he was just super competitive, had a heart of gold, but he really believed in people, and he treated people very well. The culture at Little Giant is unbelievable. It's the only place I've ever been to, and I've been in a lot of big companies and small companies, and it's the only place I've ever been to that every company meeting starts with prayer. And incredible place, a family environment, and you'll never see a dirty poster hanging up, or people don't talk. There's not a lot of swearing going on there. And it's just a very, very wholesome place to work.
That is awesome. Yeah. Guys like your dad don't come along every day, and the ladder speaks volumes. You've seen me. I have one. It's outstanding. I'm so glad I got it when I did. And, what can I say?
Well, my dad had this also. He believed in quality, and he said every ladder that goes out has my name on it, and it's going to be perfect. And so I was telling Jeffrey this story last week, that when we went to the infomercial, we went 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. And so we went from 400 ladders, was it 400 or 500 ladders a day, to 7,000 in one day.
Wow.
And they had some problems on one of the graveyard or swing shifts. And my dad had a little feeling. He was sitting up at his house, and he says, I got to go to work right now. And so he went and checked up on him, showed up in his house slippers, and they were putting out crappy ladders. And my dad shut everything down, and he said, this is going to stop right now. And he goes, what we're going to do is we're going to cut up 1,000 ladders that you guys have built right now. We're going to cut them all up, and we're going to throw them in the scrap bin because they're garbage. And my name's on these ladders, and we're not going to build garbage.
Wow. That is incredible. So Let me ask you this now, Doug. Now we know the rest of the story. It develops, it grows, and then I'm jumping ahead because I want to get into what you're doing now, which I think is
Sure.
real unique. So 2019 comes along, and you guys are knocking it out of the park. Why did you walk away from Little Giant? Could you
That's a good
explain?
question. I honestly, I was pretty burned out. I've just about got 2 million miles on Delta Airlines, and so man, I did a lot of traveling. I was away from my family a lot, and
Mhm.
I did enjoy it. But I got to the point, and I kind of compare this to an athlete. They say that the pro athletes, when they come back to training camp or whatever, and they know it's their last year, something just tells them they know it's that last year. And so, in 2019 in January, I got on a plane, and when I got on that plane, something just told me, you're not doing this anymore. This is your last year. I just had enough. I loved it. I learned so much from the company. I love the company, our employees, but it was just time to move on.
That's cool. That's very good. So have all this experience. You dealt with manufacturing, operations, sales leadership. So you've kind of done it all. 45 years at one place, and that's a tribute not only to you but your father. It had to be a great place to work, but I understand you wanted to move on. So did you say, hey, I want to retire, or I want to retire from life, or I got a burn or an itch to do something different? What was it?
Well, um, I knew I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. But about, oh gosh, probably before 2019, I would say about 5 years, maybe 5, 6 years before that, I was married for 24 years, and I didn't have a prenup because at that time, 24 years before that, I didn't have anything. So I didn't even think about having a prenup. And so I went through a pretty costly divorce it was like a 7-figure divorce. And
Wow.
well, yeah, seven. So anyway, um, what was really weird is, Mark, is I was 49 years old,
My.
and I was pretty much homeless. I know a lot of people are going to think this is weird because my ex-wife got all of my retirement, my house, and I was living with my mother, which was a very special experience. My father had passed away, and my mother was so lonely. So for about a year, I lived with my mom, and it was a really neat experience because a few years after that, my mother passed away. But so here I was, 50 years old pretty much. And I, I was on paper, I was wealthy, but so anyway, what happened was,
Jamie wants to know, how can a judge let that happen? I'm sorry.
well, that it's just how it worked out. But so, so going back to my situation, one of my dear friends, who is one of my best friends, he was involved in property management and apartments for a long time, and he said, you've got to figure out some retirement. And I said, yeah, I know. And so he said, hey, why don't you get involved in buying some apartments? And so gradually over time, as I had money, I invested in rental properties, and eventually, over the next few years, I was able to purchase up to about, I think, the total number of my units on my own was about 7 apartment buildings. And so this was a great investment. It's all passive income if you can pay cash or get them paid off quickly. And there's a lot of depreciation that you can write off and things like that. So anyway, long story short, in 2019, my brother really wanted to have all of Little Giant to himself. We were both the majority owners, and so we worked out a deal, and he bought me out. And then I was so impressed with the rental property business that I took my properties and some cash and and my partner Robert and Dallin, we formed Bohr Investment Group, and so we own about 400 apartments, individual apartments right now, several complexes, and we have a property management company. But these guys are younger than me by about 15 years. They know what they're doing. I don't tell them what to do, and if they have anything they need from me, or they want to ask me anything, they can, but they really know what they're doing. And so I'm learning more about that business right now.
Yes, and with that, she said, yeah, Jamie, I'm just going to throw it. She said, awesome comeback story. The one thing I wanted to share up here with you, and I thought this was very appropriate, Phil, he said, sounds like your dad bred spirit into the minds of those around him. Is that about right? Or
yes, and let me tell you a story. I'm writing a book about my father's incredible talents and his leadership skills and his principles. And as I was interviewing a former employee that's retired, I said, what made Hal Wing different as a boss? And he said, your dad had the ability he cared about us so much, he loved us so much, that he goes, that made us, and he said, speaking about himself, he goes, that made me want to work so much harder for him. I didn't want to disappoint him. And so here's a man that loved his employees so much that they loved him back, and they would literally climb a mountain for him. And he was that kind of a boss that, he loved his people, and they knew he loved them.
That is very cool, man. So now we're at Bohr, and you shared something with me. A lot of people probably don't know this, but the foundation, we talk about foundation, and I know you're religious, or I should say you believe in a supreme being up there, like most of us do. And sure. Bohr is built on a rock. And I was looking at that. It's been 269 days now, Doug, that since COVID started back in March. Like when I left my office in March, I'm thinking maybe a month or two, hey, I'll be back. Well, here it is. It's 269 days. Who's counting, right? But what I'm saying is, who came up with the idea of Bohr? Was that you, or did the three of you come together on those terms?
It was the three of us, but really Dallin Henry is kind of the creative partner. So we own this business 1/3 each. And I love these men because they have the same philosophy that I do. We are extremely blessed, but we also recognize that there is a higher power that has blessed us beyond anything that we could do by ourselves. And so, in the Bible, Christ talks about either being built upon a rock or being built upon sand. And so that's where BOAR, Bohr, came from, that we were going to be built upon a rock.
That's what I thought.
Or on a rock, built on a rock. Yeah. And so, so it was the philosophy with these two partners that I have is, if somebody comes in and they need something, we look for opportunities to help people, whether that's through hiring them or serving them and helping them in any way possible. So these partners I have are really great guys.
And I'll tell you what was kind of funny about this. I went to your website, and I love this. It has why Bohr, and it's so succinct, simple, and to the point. Like, I love this. Smart diversification. And you're like, why put all your eggs in one basket? You can have a healthy percent of a diverse portfolio. Then you have avoiding the tax man. I mean, you just break it down. Like, why would you want to do this? Sell your property or business, and you'll be writing a hefty check come April 15th. And you tell people about, hey, if you contribute your asset to our fund, you can enjoy a cash flow without the hassle of selling and squaring with Uncle Sam. And then you point out we're local. These are businesses that and properties you drive by. And these aren't random investments. I love this. Managed by a Manhattan broker. And, that's what you think about when you talk about investments. And then the cash flow. And you talk about that. So this pretty much is like, can I say this, a Utah thing? When I say that, I'm not saying that disrespectful, but in your area, this is kind of what you're geared for. Is that correct?
Well, all of the properties that we own or manage are all in Utah. So 50% of our property management business is our own. They are our own buildings that we take care of. And then the other 50% are other apartment complexes that we take care of for other people. So, but the income for rent from rentals is really great. It's all passive. Like I said, all passive income. If you can, and I'm a guy that really believes in being debt free, and all three of us are. But we do that kind of a lifestyle, and so we live pretty frugally. I mean, my house right now in Utah is about 1,400 square feet, and my house in Arizona is 2,100. Of course, could I live in a bigger house? Yes, absolutely. But why? Why do I need a bigger house?
Oh, that's smart. And the other thing you did here, Doug, I love this. I'm not going to read all of them. There's like 10 of them, but it says, "What does a Boer investor look like?" I mean, I don't know who came up with that, but I love the first one. It says, "Boer investors don't park all their money in the stock market," or "Boer investors like steady cash flow," and it goes on and on. It's like you write a little synopsis here of what an investor, that's going to be affiliated with you, what they're all about. Who came up with those principles? You, the three of you?
Not me. Like
Okay.
I said, I got a lot of smart people working with me, and I don't take. Yeah, it was probably. I think Dallin is the one that built our website. So Robert and Dallin
Right.
are my two partners. But as I mentioned, these men have so much experience doing what they're doing, and I learn from them every day.
Right.
And they're really smart guys.
And they are, because they both went to BYU. Am I correct on that? Did they not?
That's correct. They both graduated from BYU. I went to BYU, but this may surprise people, but I don't have a college degree. So,
Okay. Well, you have something with Jeffrey Gittimer then, right? There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
I think I have ADD, maybe not ADD, but I'm OCD. I know that, but I do. I'll tell you what, my dad didn't have a degree, my brother doesn't, and I don't. And I do think people should go to college, but we've been pretty blessed. So
Awesome. And then their degrees are like in facility management. I think it's Robert, right? And then
Robert,
Dallin has one in history and accounting. So you
yeah,
got the best of both worlds. So, um,
Dallin's the one with the really good money skills and watches everything.
really,
And then Robert's really talented with the property management side, and they're both really sharp.
so where do you see this going now, Doug? Here you are now. You've been part of a monster mash, as I call it, Little Giant Ladder. Now you have Boar. Where did the three of you? Where do you want to take this? What do you want to do with it?
Well, I mean, we're pretty conservative. We have pretty much the properties we want right now. We do maybe buy one property a year or every other year if something good comes around. But we're very frugal. We get bargains. What we do is we buy some properties that are bargains, and then we'll go and we'll remodel them, and we can depreciate all of those things, and raise the rent a little bit. But we don't get in huge debt, and we're pretty comfortable doing what we're doing. But we do from time to time buy a few other properties.
Very nice. Very nice. So tell me, I just got to know this. An organization, and I salute you for doing this to all the veterans out there, but you have an organization now. It's called Honoring Heroes Foundation. And this is a charitable organization that helps fallen police officers. Is this something, what compelled you to get involved with that, Doug?
Well, it's a 501(c), and my father was really involved in this. He was in the military, and he had a very big heart for the police, men and women in the police force, especially the Utah Highway Patrol. That's who we mostly help, but we also help local police departments if someone's killed or injured. But I was asked to be on the board this past year, and so it's been near and dear to me. And I just love it. We help a lot of really, really neat families. And people don't realize that when a police officer is killed, they don't have a lot of insurance. We come in and sometimes we'll purchase the burial plot for them or the headstone, and we'll help the family and help the kids and things like that. Christmas, different things like that. So it's really a great organization, right. And we are all indebted to the men and women of law enforcement. They don't make a lot of money. They risk their lives every day, and for the most part, right now, they're getting a real bad rap.
That's great. Tom Ginn saying hi to us. But no, and what are you looking to do now? Here you sit on the board of this. So I got to ask you, I'm going to go back a little bit here. So can you share, because people know, I know this because I've been around Mormons. So can you talk to me about like a mission trip, or when you were growing up, what that was like to be part of the church? Can you share a story with us?
Yeah. So when I was younger, it was 19 years of age that the young men can go on missions, and then, 21 for the young women if they're not married. And that's been changed now. I think it's 18 for the young men and 19 for the young women. So
okay.
When I went on my mission, I think there was about 30,000 missionaries worldwide. Now, older couples can also go if they're retired and they have the resources. But when I was 19, I was called to serve and you don't get to choose, believe me, because I was called to serve in South Dakota. It was called the South Dakota Rapid City Mission, which was a huge mission. It was all of North and South Dakota.
Wow.
Parts of Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, and Wyoming. And so, believe me, I was there for 2 winters, and first one was in Fargo, North Dakota, and the second one was in Bismarck, and it was really cold. But, people in the Midwest are great. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story. We did a lot of door-to-door, what we called it tracting, but it's door-to-door contacts. And when it's cold outside, oh man, it's miserable. But I was in Bismarck my second Christmas and knocked on a door, and this little this little old lady that looked like she could have been my grandma was smiling through the storm door and opened up the door, and she said, "Oh, are you boys cold?" And I thought, "Oh, we're gonna get in," because she looks nice and she's really looks like a sweet little lady. And we said, "Oh yes, ma'am, we're very cold." And she just slammed the door and said, "Good." But I will tell you that going door to door, talking to people about religion, I was pretty shy when I was growing up. And right. I believe that was one of the best preparations that I ever had to be in sales, because when you talk to people about religion or politics, wow, things can get pretty heated. But I learned how to deal with people and how to work with people.
Right. Just going door to door, I've had to do that selling lawn care, but I can only imagine what you are offering. My goodness, I don't know how I'd handle that. That's got to be a tough thing.
Sure. So one summer I was in South Dakota and I was training a brand new missionary from Salt Lake, and we walk up on this guy's porch and he's sitting on his porch swing, and he said, "Boys, I'm going into my house to get a shotgun, and if you guys are still here, I'm going to shoot both of you guys." And I said, "Have a good day. See you later."
Oh my God. Oh Lord.
And you got problems with dogs and things like that.
Right.
People stick their dogs on you.
And people probably know who you are. Did you kind of wear like the white shirt in the summer?
Yeah. They knew who you were. But, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And then when I retired from Little Giant, my ex-wife and we went on a mission, and we went to Hawaii. We were actually at the University of Hawaii Institute, and I taught 5 religion classes each week, and to college kids. So it was really cool.
That is neat. And speaking about BYU, I got to bring this up. So, you and I were kidding around about football. So I know who Ty Detmer is, and he made it to the NFL. In fact, I think at one time he played for the Eagles, and then Jim McMahon. Here's a Catholic kid that goes to BYU. I don't know how that happened. I don't know, maybe no other school wanted him because he was so crazy. I'm teasing, Jim, if you're listening to this, but he wound up in the NFL. Can you tell me what it was like? Do you remember a Jim McMahon when he was there, or Ty Detmer during those football years at BYU?
Well, I've actually met Steve Young and
I forgot him, by the way. He was going to be
Steve
next.
Young was played for the 49ers, was one
Yes.
of the best quarterbacks probably in the history of the game.
Right.
You think about it, he came in after Joe Montana. I mean, wow, what shoes to fill. I mean, Joe Montana was a legend, but Steve Young well. But I met Steve Young and Jim McMahon. They're total opposites.
Well, obviously,
Jim McMahon, I have autographed footballs from both of them, and they're both great guys. Jim McMahon was just a party animal, and but he was a great competitor and didn't back down from anybody. But he paid for it later on. He took a lot of big hits in the NFL, but
right.
But BYU is like quarterback university, and I'm so
Yes.
proud of BYU right now. They're 9-0. They're number 8 in the nation, and they do have a chance to go into the playoff. I mean,
Right.
I don't know if they have a chance. They're independent in football, but they're really good this year. The quarterback is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation.
That's neat. And Doug, I got to ask you this. Do you feel, so I'm moving along here, humble, hungry, helpful? That's something I try and live by. We know about humility, but then hungry, you have a desire to constantly learn, throughout your life. You could have just stepped back, leaving Little Giant, and said, hey, man, I really don't need to do anything or prove anything. You could have chose to do that, but I can tell you're a student, and then you go out of your way to help people. I mean, just talking with you and doing a little research on you, I know you don't turn your back on individuals. So did your dad instill that in you when you grew up, or is that something you acquired watching your father?
Well, a little bit of both. And my mother was very good. So my dad had this huge heart. I'll tell you an interesting story, and then I'll tell you about my mother really quick.
Okay, great.
My dad, one, I can't remember what year this was, but one year right before Christmas, my dad had to let this gentleman go that was an employee. I'd say it was 3 or 4 weeks before Christmas. And he deserved to be let go, and it was a tough time. And I remember this employee left, and a few days later, my dad called me into his office and said, hey, you live out by Lynn, right? And I said, yes, I do. And he goes, I want you to take this envelope to Lynn and give it to him. He said, he lost his job, and he probably is not going to have a very good Christmas. And so I went over to this person's house, and he opened the door. Well, his daughter opened the door, and then she got him, and he came out, and he was real angry. You could tell he was very angry. And because he'd been let go at work. And anyway, I handed him this envelope and said, hey, my dad wants you to have a very, very, a very Merry Christmas and wishes you all the best. And in this envelope, my dad gave him like $5,000 for Christmas.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'll tell you another story about my dad. He was such a good man. So there was another guy named Dan who was a salesman. And my dad had no idea that this Dan was going to be let go, but the VP of sales let Dan go. And so my dad finds out about it, and he tried to call Dan. And this Dan guy, when I interviewed him for the book, he said, I just ignored your dad. He goes, I wouldn't answer his calls. But he said, your dad didn't give up. He just kept trying to call me and call me and call me. He goes, finally, I picked up the phone. And he said, hey, Danny. He said, what's going on? I know you're avoiding me. And he says, well, Hal, I'm real upset. I got, that the VP let me go. And he goes, I worked real hard. I tried my best. And so anyway, my dad said, hey, we're still friends. And then this Dan tells me that the next month he gets a check in the mail, a commission check. He's not even working there anymore. And he goes, your dad paid me a commission check for 12 months. He goes, he didn't have to do that, but he goes, he cared about me enough that out of the goodness of his heart, he goes, he sent me a check every month for 12 months.
Incredible.
So that was my dad. Now, my mom, when my dad passed away, my mom would every Christmas she would call me up to her house, and she had these little envelopes with the names and addresses of these widows. And my mom said, you know, here you go deliver these. And so my mom would help these widows at Christmas time. My mom grew up in Germany during the war and had one dress growing up, and half their house got blown up by our bombs. And
Right.
she was so conservative with money that she was very wealthy, obviously. And when my dad passed away, she even had more wealth. But she would ask me, she would say, am I going to run out of money? And I said, Mom, you've got millions in the bank. And she goes, I just don't want to run out of money.
That's incredible. That is incredible. I mean, my dad grew up in the Depression era, and he kind of did it the hard way. He worked a
Mhm.
job at the Bethlehem Steel, which is no more. He was a retired sergeant major, so he kind of double dipped, and he finally hit that magic number. But he worked his butt off, you know.
We have no idea. My mom said that they would go around every day and scrounge for onions or tomatoes, or she said
Right.
something they'd only get one potato, and her mom would put it in like a broth, and they would, I mean,
Oh
they had
yeah.
6 kids, and they would share this one potato with broth. I mean, we have no idea.
Yeah. Dandelion soup. I've heard of that. I don't even know what that tastes like, but um, and with that, you know, I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. Last week, you were with 2 individuals. So I got to ask, you know, everybody wants to know if you've never met them face to face. So there you are with the king of sales, Jeffrey Gitomer, and then the master of the live stream, Ken Walls. And I was teasing you while you guys were doing some live stuff like, hey, why don't you say something, Doug? And what's it like when you're in a room with those two guys? Because, you know, you talk about the competition oozing out of each other. So
Well, they're both very nice men. I mean, I will tell you that we tell each other we love each other. I mean, they're both dear friends to me, and they have been so kind and patient with me. Jeffrey, I've known for 20, 25 years, and he is the real deal. And there's no filter on him sometimes. And Ken keeps saying, we're trying to corrupt you. We're trying to get you to swear. You won't swear. But they're great men, and I look up to them. I admire them. I wish I had some of the skills that they had, but you know, Jeffrey, I have to give Jeffrey credit because he, you know, he's kind of been gently prodding me along, and he knows that I don't have to go to work every day. He knows that I don't have to write this book, that I can just travel and goof around with cars and do these things. But you know, he said, your dad's story needs to be told. You're the guy that needs to tell it. And when you tell it, you're going to cement your dad's legacy, but you're also going to grow as a person, as a man, and in different ways than you've never grown and stretched before. So I really appreciate
right.
Jeffrey, and I'm telling you, Ken Walls, when I need Ken, he's always there as well.
Right. And you know, here I am doing this live stream thing, and I owe that to both those guys, particularly Ken's the guy that reached out to me and said, Mark, you need to do this. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I mean, I'm how old and why would I even want to do this? But
Sure.
it's actually kind of fun. And I step back now, Doug, and say, look at the people I've meeting along the way. If I hadn't have picked up the phone and called him and he called me back, I wouldn't know half these people like that are with us this evening. And
Mhm.
they're quality people. And it's not about the dollar bill behind your name, you know, how much money you have. I mean, but I totally admire you. You brought something up to me. You don't have to do this. And what makes your motor run to like say, hey, there's more I need to do, and you know, I don't have to do it, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like, why, you know, because a lot of people probably look at you and say, why is that dude doing this with Mark, and who's this Mark dude, or why is he talking to Ken and Jeffrey Gitomer? You know, what's the deal? He doesn't have to do that. Do you understand where I'm going with this? Like, a lot of people would look at you and figure you got it made. You don't need to worry about anything, but you have problems like everybody else, right?
Well, yeah, I've been married 3 times.
Okay. No, and I'm not making fun of that, Doug. This
Sure.
is my whole point. Successful people run into obstacles. Everybody thinks it just happens like that. And everybody I've been around, from Ken, you, Jeffrey Gittimer, they all have, yes, I've hit the wall a couple times. I was bankrupt, or,
Sure.
the one guy that really comes to my mind, the pride of Eastlake, is Benjamin Franklin Gay. I didn't know that Ben Gay thought about sticking a gun in his mouth, and he did. He didn't
Yeah,
squeeze it, but people go through these things.
sure. Yeah, and I mean, Jeffrey, he's really helped me in that. As we've gone through this book, he said, and we've had we had 3 days where we just brainstormed and talked about the book, and we meet every week about it. But he just said, you know what you're going to do? You're going to end up taking these principles that you learned from your dad, these leadership principles. And he goes, not only are you going to write a book about this, but he goes, you're going to train other companies and use those principles of leadership to help them grow and develop their training programs. And I'm like, I am? And he goes, yeah, you're going to do that. And so Jeffrey has this ability to see, something in me. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it. And Ken too. Ken calls me all the time and says, you're a good dude. You're a really good dude. And I appreciate them saying that. But of course, I've got freckles just like anybody else. We all have problems. We all have things we're working on, weaknesses, shortcomings, but they're not all the same. And so we are here. I believe we're here on this earth to progress and to become more like our supreme creator, right? More like God. And we've been put here on this earth to go through these experiences, to learn from not only our mistakes, but also to have victories and things like that. And that as we do those things, and as we learn and grow, we become better.
Absolutely. And I believe this. I believe your dad's looking down, just smiling and saying, "Hey, look at that. Doug's moving on." And he's proud of you. I just know that. I believe that in my heart. Like both my parents are gone, and they're looking down, and I can, because someone asked me, who are you? And I said, I'm Betty and Wayne Gassard's son. I know who I am. I'm grounded. And I just know they're looking down at me saying, look at that, Betty, look what Mark's doing now. Would you ever think that he would do something like that? Because they know you when you started out and where you came from. But you are very humble, and I admire that about you.
Well, let me just say that when I was at Little Giant and where I am at now with Bohr, but I was fortunate enough to be born with the right last name. Now, I did have wonderful parents, and my dad gave us opportunities, but I am no better than anyone else in the world. And in some aspects, I am going to be judged, I believe. My father believed this, that someday when he met his maker, he was going to say, Hal, I blessed you with a lot of things. And what did you do with those things? Did you use those things to bless the lives of others? And so I do believe that where much is given, much is expected. And so I do believe that someday I'm going to have to give an accounting for what I had. And did I bless the lives of other people? Was I a good influence? Was I a friend? Did I help people in need? And so for me, that's the most important thing, not how much money we have, but how many people can we help?
And there you go. I mean, Doug, you about wrapped it up here. I just have to ask you, did you ever, since I love baseball, everybody knows this because I umpire it, from youth level to high school. What was your 3-2 moment in life? Do you remember? Did you have a specific moment where you said, hey, enough of this, and this is the direction I'm going? Or was there a struggle or something that?
Well, one of the struggles I have had in life was with my relationships, with my marriages and things, and so I'm really trying to figure out what I've not done correct. And one of the things that I think the problem could be is that I like to help people, and as I go, I'm actually going to therapy about these my relationships with women. And honestly,
Really? Okay.
I think that part of the problem is maybe I'm not making good choices. And some of that may be from, I like to help people and maybe I can fix people. And so I need to really work on myself and look at more of an independent, successful woman who is there. I really need somebody who's going to be nice to me, because that hasn't been the case in a lot of these relationships. But I'm just looking for somebody who wants to be my friend, my best friend, and who will be nice to me. So
that's good to know, Doug. And I'm not making fun of you, because I shared with this earlier. I got to see my brother this past weekend, and there's a guy. I will tell you, West Point grad, top of the line individual, quality individual, and he's been married 3 times.
Sure.
Basically, he sacrificed. That you have to. Being in the military is not an easy life.
Sure.
And he.
But
thank you for sharing, Ken. and I get that, and we all go through our, what I say, trials and tribulations. I mean, it's and you mentioned it. I believe the man puts us on this earth to go through things, and
sure.
How have you served your fellow man? And I know Ken is a giver, and I always think about that with me. I don't give enough. I mean, compared to others, it's just me. It's just something I'm working on for me. I need to give more. I don't give enough.
Well, yeah, and I believe everything happens for a reason. And look at it this way: instead of saying, "Why did this happen to me?" look at it this way and say, "What can I learn from the outcome, from this experience?" And so, again, I've had failures in life, and we need to look at it not like, "Hey, why did this happen to me?" but what can I learn from this? I'll give you an example really quick. My dad sold the company, and in the 1980s, he sold his business, and the company that bought it ran it into the ground. And my dad walked into a bank. This is unheard of. He walked into a bank and said, "I want to borrow $1 million. I don't have any assets. I don't have any collateral. I've always kept my word to you guys, and I've always paid the money back." And the banker stood up, the chairman of the bank stood up and said, "Hal, you've always kept your word. We believe in you. We're going to give you the money." On a handshake, $1 million. And he bought the company back. And an incredible story. Well, I asked my dad about that. I go, "Weren't you afraid? Weren't you scared to start again?" And he goes, "No, it was easier the second time, because I knew and remembered all the mistakes I had made, and I made it so much faster the second time because I eliminated those mistakes." He was an incredible guy, a huge risk taker. But again, try walking into a bank today and tell them you have no assets and you're going to borrow $1 million on a handshake. I'm promising you, it's not going to happen.
Amen to that. And with that, Doug, I'm going to say we're going to shut this down. I'm going to put you back in the green room there. I hope the entertainment's good and the TV's good, and I hope you enjoyed being here at Peachtree Corners. Do you think it's still the peachiest place on the planet? Do you like it?
Yeah, well, you're one of the nicest guys I've met, so it's got to be. It's
okay. Well, thanks. Hey, don't go anywhere. I'm going to close this out. Okay, so sit tight. I'll be right back.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Doug, thank you so much, and everybody. So there it is. There you get to hear a guy that, from the outside looking in, you think he has it all, and he's like everyone else. We all have situations. We all have things we have to deal with in life. And one of the things, Mark's message, we all talk about that. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Tom. And it's like this, and that's what I've often said. Be a leader, be a friend, and most important of all, be of service. And that's what I try and do. But it wasn't about me. It was about listening to Doug. And man, that was very inspirational, what he had to say, how he started out. And he shared some very intimate things with us tonight. And I applaud him for that. I salute him for that. There is no doubt that the next chapter in this man's life, whether it's through Bohr Investments or writing the book, which I believe will probably be a #1 bestseller. I'm going to make a prediction right here tonight because guys like, Hal Wing don't come along every day. So with that, I'm going to tell everybody, enjoy your Thanksgiving week. Enjoy Thanksgiving with your family. It's all about the gratitude. I'm going to back it on out of here. And as always, together, you and I, if we step in the batter's box of life, you know what I'm going to tell you. So don't laugh because I love baseball. It's about our approach in life. If we keep swinging for the fences, you and I together will swing, knock it out of the park. This was Mark's message. Mark Gassert, Peachtree Corners, Georgia, the peachiest place on the planet. And I will see you sometime tomorrow. Enjoy your evening.